I turned off a movie halfway because my boyfriend didn't want to see it, so he gave me a bruise after I confronted him about it. Now, I told him to BTFO, and I might get a restraining order. Posted by you/deleted my boyfriend, Wyatt, and I always watch movies together every time we have off days that end up on the same day, especially since the pandemic. We go back and forth on who picks the movie, but I've noticed that he's usually talking through my movie choices, either pointing out plot holes or just talking down about the movie one way or another. I never act this way when it's his turn to pick the movie, even if I don't care for it, like the last movie he chose, The Fountain. I was so confused until halfway through, and then bored the rest of the film, but I didn't talk during the movie or constantly dump on it either, and even at the end when he asked what I thought about it, I said it was alright, even though I thought the movie wasn't good. It tried to do a bunch of different things all at once and ended up doing nothing, but he seemed really fond of it, so I didn't want to hurt his feelings. He doesn't seem to have that mindset when it comes to him watching my picks. I've told him to shush and to just watch the movies, but he just sighs loudly and says they're boring. If I tell him to stop, he gets all huffy and goes totally silent and usually takes his phone out to play a game or scroll the internet, totally ignoring me in the movie. It really hurts my feelings. Yesterday, it was my turn to choose again, and I picked a good movie that really hit me hard as a kid. I bawled when I first watched it and still tear up to this day. I told him this movie was special to me, but he barely got 10 minutes into it before he started up saying it was boring and childish. It is a kid's movie, but that doesn't make it boring. I was getting upset, and before the big part of the movie even got close, I just couldn't take it anymore. I felt like him acting this way during a super important part would ruin the movie for me, maybe forever, so I just got up and turned it off. He asked what I was doing and I told him I didn't want to have the movie ruined for me, so it was better if I just turned it off. He said I was being a baby and to turn it back on. I refused and just told him to pick something to watch instead, then I sat on the couch. He got mad and said if I was going to be dramatic like this, then he didn't want to watch anything with me and got up and went to his room and slammed the door. This happened the other day and he's been giving me the cold shoulder, and when I ask why, he said he wants an apology for making him feel like dirt. Should I apologize? Did I really make a huge deal out of just a movie? Am I the jerk? Update 1. I ended up having to call my parents, who called the cops on Wyatt. I read all the advice from everyone saying he wasn't respecting my interests or me as a person, and it got me thinking, and stuff I ignored or overlooked before started popping out to me, stuff that didn't seem fair to me that I just put up with because I loved him. So many people told me to just break up with him and I could do better, but I was in love and he was my first serious boyfriend, and I really just wanted to work things out and get through this thing with him. I tried to sit down and have a serious talk with him, just hoping he'd listen this time. I told him how his actions had made me feel and his behavior during my movie choices ruined the experience for me. I told him I never act that way during his movies because I know he likes them and I respect him and don't want to be mean or belittle his interests, even if they don't interest me. About then, he told me I was being dramatic again and they were just stupid movies, and he tried excusing his behavior by saying my movie choices suck anyways. I was just so tired by this point and wanted some space and quiet to think about where we go from here. I started to ask him to go back to his apartment for the night, but he interrupted me by yelling how since I couldn't have my way, I was kicking him out. It really scared me because he'd never screamed at me before, even when he'd raise his voice during arguments, he never full-on screamed at me. I tried to get him to calm down, but he started calling me a bunch of nasty stuff and even backed me up against a wall and grabbed my bicep hard enough to bruise it. I panicked and ran to the bathroom and locked it behind me. He banged on the door, telling me to come out, and I was crying and couldn't think of anything else to do but call my parents. Mom answered and she could hear him screaming and the banging in the background. Her and Dad were freaked out and Dad called the cops. Long story short, the cops and my folks showed up and Wyatt was removed from my apartment, and my parents told him not to come back or we'd get a restraining order. It's almost 10:30 p.m. now and I've locked my apartment up and am currently staying with my mom and dad for a while. Thanks for the advice everyone, but Wyatt and I are pretty much over now. Relevant comments. I'm sad she had to go through this, but happy that he shows his true colors now instead of when they would have either lived together or married. But what the hell was that? Is that some kind of nagging? What goal did he have in mind? He may not have had an evil plan in mind, but the cycle I see going is that he would keep belittling her interests, and she would keep 1, going along with it, and 2, not belittling his, and eventually he would make all the movie decisions, and then they'd have an established dynamic where she makes bad decisions and he corrects them for her. Not letting her see her family, or better yet turning her against them, not letting her have any money, not letting her have anything at all so that she's totally dependent on him. That way she'll never leave him no matter what other crazy messed up stuff he does. Then he can take every bad day out on her and blame her for everything he does wrong. Boom. Now he doesn't ever have to feel bad about himself because it's all her fault. It starts slowly and on little things, such as belittling her taste in movies. Then, after he gets away with it, he eventually works up to where she can't do anything right, and it will continue to escalate. Then, she will eventually feel like a loser all the time. She's unlovable by anyone else but him. After being on Reddit, I've learned how important it is to not ignore even the tiniest red flags. If someone you care about belittles the things you love every time you share with them, eventually you begin to believe that everything you love is stupid. And maybe you're stupid too. Maybe you're as worthless as the things you like. And once you believe in your own worthlessness, you'll let people control you because you truly believe you deserve it. If anyone reading relates to this, please believe me. You're not worthless. The things you love have value because they're important to you. Your feelings are real and important. Don't let anyone take that from you. He was just joking around because it was a bad movie anyways, so he was trying to make it interesting, and she was being a buzzkill and taking his comments too seriously. I mean, come on, how was he supposed to see that scene without snorting at it or making a comment? It was so cringy and childish. Some people just get their kicks out of making fun of others. Source: my friend's like this with anything I show her, despite the fact that the things she shows me are objectively more childish and I don't say anything about it. My ex did this and now I sometimes hide the shows and movies I watch from my current husband because of it. He used to make fun of what I liked to watch and never made concessions to watch movies I liked. Sure, they might have been stupid rom-coms, but I watch movies 95% to be entertained, not challenged, and he never understood that unless it was for him. I know I don't have to hide it now, but it's like leftover anxiety. Heck, my current husband takes me to movies even though he absolutely hates it because he knows I love it. Ex never did, he always complained and made a big deal, so I never asked after the first time. Like, just let people like what they like. As long as it isn't illegal, who fucking cares? And especially when it's your partner. I made a muppet of my boyfriend and showed it to him during intimacy. He got insecure about it being 6 inches larger than him, so he stopped talking to me. Now, he hasn't talked to me in so long, I might just bite the bullet and replace him with a muppet. Posted by you/Muppet Mistake a Throwaway. I, 23F, and my boyfriend, 22M, have been together for 6 months. He and I have had a pretty cut and dry relationship up to this point. I've always been what some people would call quirky, so pranks are sort of my bread and butter. He, John, has expressed that he really likes this part of me and I'm just happy to be with someone who can handle all of my zest. Sometimes, I worry that he doesn't actually think I'm as funny as he says, but he always reassures me that this is not the case. One of the ways we really like to express our humor to each other is in the bedroom. For example, I love to do impressions of mostly Disney characters, such as the paperwork lady from Monsters Incorporated. He sometimes does them too, but he's not that good at voices. Here's where I think I may have taken it too far. I recently bought a sewing machine to try and make cosplay costumes and stuff, but something dawned on me as I was messing around with it. We often make love with a habitual back rub massage sort of thing, and we switch off. Then, we progress into French kissing, and then full-blown you know what. One very important fact to tell you is that John does in fact wear glasses, so I will usually make a point to take them off and put them on the table for safety. During this particular romp in the hay, I got a really funny idea about how to take his glasses off next time and I couldn't stop laughing. He asked me what I was laughing at because he has some insecurity about his appearance, but I assured him that it was nothing like that. We had our fun and John went home, but all I could think about was this plan. The next day, I went to the fabric store and bought a bunch of skin-colored felt and wire framing and cotton and got to work creating a Muppet-style version of my boyfriend to put his glasses on next time we started doing it. Honestly, the thing was looking pretty good, and I even found some clothes at Goodwill that were his style. I dressed the puppet in the clothes, hid them under my collection of Squishmallows that's in my room, and invited him over. To spare you all the explicit details, we did start kissing and taking clothes off and stuff, but my hands were shaking as I reached up to grab his glasses. Instead of putting it on my nightstand, I made a point to say something like I'm just gonna put these right here, as I stretched over to the Squishmallow that was covering the puppet boyfriend's head and put the glasses right over his felt eyes. He got confused, I think, and looked back to where I put the glasses and sat up, as a felt version of his face was in front of him. He was silent for a second, then said, "Is that supposed to be me?" As I was laughing, I said something like, "Do you like it?" As I took it out of the Squishmallow pile and revealed the entirety of Muppet John. "Oh, did you make that?" he asked, and I stood it up off the bed and asked him to stand next to it. "See? It's just like you basically," I said, but he still wasn't laughing that much. I think he saw that the Muppet ended up being just a little bit taller than him. He's 5 feet 7 inches, and probably insecure about that. The Muppet ended up accidentally being a little taller than him, around 6 feet 1 inch, based on seeing them side by side. I noticed his disappointment and did a tried and true Disney impression to make him feel better. In my best goofy impression, I said, "Well, looks like we should call him Big John Hayek." John just took the glasses off of Big John and let him fall to the floor, and put the glasses on the nightstand and sat on the bed for a while, but we eventually went to Sin City. It was a lot more quiet than usual. He left after that, even though we were planning on having a sleepover. He said he wasn't feeling good. I texted him good night and went to bed. This morning I haven't gotten any good morning text, or any text at all from him, even though he always sends me a good morning text. I'm worried that Big John was a step too far and that normal John didn't think the joke was as funny as I did. I feel like he's just putting me in an uncomfortable position by not telling me how this made him really feel, even though I thought it was pretty funny. Is this salvageable, or am I doomed? Relevant comments. Okay, let me get this straight. You made a very lifelike Muppet-like doll in the image of your boyfriend to spice up lovemaking, a doll that ended up being about 6 inches taller than him. 6 inches is a noticeable amount when comparing height, length, width, etc., so he probably feels like the height difference was purposeful and not accidental. It wasn't to spice up our lovemaking life. I thought it would be funny to put his glasses on it and surprise him. I feel like I would find it funny and endearing if it was done to me, but I realize he might have felt like I made Big John big on purpose. I just overestimated the felt pieces for his leg. I want to tell him it was an accident because I was in a rush making the legs, but he isn't texting me back. Big John's legs are a bit wonky. One leg is about 4 inches longer than the other, so I feel like it's obvious I wasn't messing with the height on purpose. I hope I can talk to him soon. Top comments. I read the title thinking, oh, that's a cute toy, thinking teddy bear size, then reread the scale. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but it can come off creepy AF. Me too. I thought it was a cute little doll replica of her boyfriend. But it was an actual life-size lookalike, hidden under a pile of toys. That's so creepy. Girl, WTF is this? Update 1. It's been a wild couple of days or so, and I've been honestly a little depressed at the negative reaction from everyone. After John left after we did the no pants dance in front of the puppet, he didn't text me for like a day and a half. I was so sad that I didn't even want to look at the sewing machine to make my custom Disney ears with because it just reminded me of Big John. Speaking of Big John, I hung him in the closet so I didn't have to look at him. I was so ashamed. I was drawing when my phone buzzed, and I saw it was finally John. All it said was, "Hey, can we talk?" I was super nervous and he came over to my place. It was awkward at first because it has been so long since we saw or talked to each other, and I honestly thought things were gonna end, especially after reading all the comments. However, he apologized for his behavior and told me something that cleared things up. Apparently, his mom has been cheating on his dad with multiple younger men for years, and he and his dad just found this out the other day, the day I made Big John. He wasn't upset about Big John at all. I could tell he was still upset and my instincts were saying I should do a Disney voice, but I considered the comments from the last post and decided just to say, "I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope your family is okay." Then, the most surprising part, he said, "I'm sorry too," and then in his adorably not very good singing voice, sang Big John never bothered me, anyway. I have something for him actually, and brought out one of his favorite slap bracelets that his mom got him as a kid. He pulled me into a hug and we danced like we were Cinderella and Prince Charming boyfriend. He tried to dip me but he's not very strong, so it created a funny moment where we kissed and then he led me to my royal suite and well, you can probably guess the rest. We got on the bed and normal John had some smears on his glasses after kissing. He asked if there was anywhere, or anyone that he could put these on. I brought out Big John and his hand fell off, but it was like a fairy tale romance when normal John placed the glasses on Big John's cute nose. So for now, it seems like a happy ending. Top comments. This is the greatest story ever, and I'm super glad to hear your fairy tale update. Not sure why so many people in your first post were so mean about it, but I stand by my earlier assertion that my husband would die laughing if I busted out with a Muppet version of him during lovemaking time. I'm glad your guy truly appreciates your weirdness and creativity, and I hope you will continue to let your freak flag fly high and proud. Fellow weirdos of the world, unite. You sound like Jess from New Girl. I'm glad you found your Nick Miller. Also, that puppet is terrifying. Glad your boyfriend finds it amusing. Also, though, that's a great freestyle puppet for someone who just picked up sewing. Good job. Maybe head over to the sewing subreddit for more tips on any future puppet adventures. My stepdaughter keeps breaking our stuff and calling me a witch, so I finally gave her a piece of my mind after she threw hot cocoa in my face. Now, I'm living with my parents away from my husband, and I'll be letting her know that I'm the real bitch. Posted by you/throw_RASW12. I, 38F, met my husband, 44M, about 4 years ago. I'm 8 weeks pregnant and only my husband and I know. I have a son, 8M, with my boyfriend who passed away in a car accident before my son was born. My husband has a daughter, 13F, from a previous marriage. She lives with us every other week. When we got married, His ex-wife tried everything to get full custody of my stepdaughter and failed, but it was made very clear to me, by all of them, that I am not her mother and am not allowed to participate in raising her. My stepdaughter basically ignored me and my son whenever she was with us. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't hurting anyone directly. My son learned very early not to cross her and kept to himself when she was around. I suspected the ex-wife behind her coldness towards me and thought this must be hard for her with all these changes. I tried to befriend her over the years, but she wasn't having it. It got worse when the ex-wife remarried and got pregnant with twins 2 years ago. She started ignoring my stepdaughter, trying to get my husband to have her more. We happily obliged, of course, and basically stopped being a mother to her. It didn't help either that the new husband didn't like my stepdaughter and wasn't shy about not wanting to raise another man's daughter. I asked my husband if we could take her full time and try to raise her because I saw that her mental health was deteriorating and that she needed stability. The ex-wife blatantly refused this suggestion, so we continued with the every other week arrangement. The twins were born about a year ago, and all went downhill from there. It seemed like the worse my stepdaughter had it at her mom's, the more she hated me and my son. She would throw fits a couple of times every time she's with us. She would break our stuff and call me a witch if I tried to tell her off. It's her house because her father bought it and we're just guests, she says. She would yell at my son and she even hit him a couple of times, telling him to keep to his room if he didn't like her treatment of him. When I told her not to put her hand on my son, she told me, "What are you going to do about it?" My son grew fearful of her and would ask me to take him to Grandpa, my late boyfriend's father, when she's living with us. I talked to my husband about it. I told him my stepdaughter needed professional help because she's not feeling well and she's making us miserable when she's around. She started to go to therapy, and it's been 6 months now. Other than that, my husband didn't know what to do either. If he tried to talk to her about being nice to us, she played innocent and told him she was playing around and hugged and kissed my son in front of him, and if he tried to be stern, she would throw a tantrum and accuse him of loving my son more than her. 3 months ago, my son's grandpa passed away. This hit my son and me very hard. My son was inconsolable for many weeks and couldn't really understand what it meant that he couldn't see Grandpa again. Grandpa was a carpenter and so was my late boyfriend, so from a very young age, my son loved hanging with him in the garage working. Many times when he's there, he comes home with something they made together, butter knives, boxes, chessboards, and for my 38th birthday last summer, I got a stool that my son designed himself and built with his grandpa and then painted. This was the last project they had together since Grandpa passed away a few weeks later, so the stool was priceless to us. We had it in the kitchen. My stepdaughter made a lot of negative remarks about the stool, how ugly and poorly made it was. She laughed at my son's poor taste and he was very distraught. This was the first time, however, that my husband got very angry at her and asked her to go to her room. She was so scared of his reaction that she went without any protest. This Christmas, she was supposed to be with her mother. On Christmas Eve, her mother dropped her off at our house very early in the morning. Her new husband had decided he didn't want her to go with them to his parents' house, where they usually spend Christmas. My stepdaughter was on the verge of tears standing there, listening to her mother making excuses to my husband and me. My husband hugged my stepdaughter the whole time and I tried to fight away my tears. After her mom left, she went upstairs to her room to sleep. I also went to sleep since we don't usually wake up this early on holidays. My husband went to the gym and later, he was going to the train station to bring my parents who were going to celebrate Christmas with us. Around 10 a.m., I heard my son screaming and crying downstairs. I ran down in horror. My stepdaughter had decided to break the stool my son had built with his grandpa. She was trying to shove it in the fireplace. When she saw me, she smirked and said she didn't want ugly furniture in her house. I pulled her away and told her to go to her room and try to get the pieces of wood out of the fireplace. That was when she threw a scalding hot liquid in my face. It was hot cocoa. I yelled in pain and my son started panicking, so I ran to him to tell him that I was fine. My stepdaughter stood there laughing. I took my son upstairs and went back to her. I grabbed her, hard in her arm, and started pulling, pushing and dragging her up to her room and locked the door. My husband came home with my parents a few moments later. My mom took me to the emergency room and my son insisted on coming with me. I had second-degree burns on my cheek and neck. When I went home, my husband was so mad at me for assaulting my stepdaughter by using force to get her to her room. He told me I should have had compassion, knowing how hurt she was by her mother's abandonment. I told him that I have had enough with this. I'm living a nightmare half of my life, having to go on eggshells in my own home whenever she's around. My son is a prisoner in his own room when she's living with us, too terrified to cross a boundary of hers. I told him that I didn't know how to handle this and that it was a mistake from the beginning that I wasn't allowed to be a parental figure in her life with authority. He disagreed and told me that she has a kind heart and needed patience, but the thing is, I don't think she does. She targeted my son's handiwork, fully aware of its sentimental value, and my face because she always hated the fact that my husband thinks I am beautiful and is open with complimenting my eyes and smile. I didn't stay there for Christmas. I took my son and parents and went to my parents' home where I live now. My husband is in panic mode. He's been texting and calling me all the time, trying to get me to move back and work things out. My stepdaughter even texted, apologizing, which my husband probably made her do, but I don't know what to do. I love him so much, but I'm ashamed to say that I hate that girl. My son starts hyperventilating of the thought of living with her again. What about my unborn baby? I feel sick of the thought of having half custody and being at the mercy of his half-sister when it's my husband's week. It's to the point that I'm thinking of giving up my baby. Update 1. I came here now to tell you that I have moved on with my plans. It's just hard for me to talk about it since it was a planned pregnancy. Both my husband and I were longing for him/her. It was also hard to see him broken over my decision. He thinks I have acted so fast and can't fathom how I could just throw away our life together so fast. I think he still doesn't realize the severity of his daughter's actions. He even had her with him when he visited me at my parents' house the first time. He wanted us to have a sit down. When I saw her in the car, I immediately told him to drive back. He was shocked. However, when he saw the dark scars on my face, which will fade away with time according to the doctor, he decided to follow me. I can't help but blame myself though. It's my fault that he thought this was a sudden decision. Had I been more honest and open with him, he would have known this was hurting me and my boy for months now, years really. This blame will lie with me and me alone. I thought by keeping my mouth shut I would minimize the damage. My stepdaughter is living with her grandparents full-time now and I think it's going to be a permanent thing. Her stepdad is adamant about not having her around his children. I think this is so messed up on so many levels, but I don't know if I have a say in this. It's her parents' call even if I think it a grievous mistake, and I can't say that I care either. My boy is doing better. He loves living with my parents. He knows he will have to change schools and he's so scared about it, but he still thinks it's great that we moved. We started therapy. In one session, the therapist tried to explain to him how his stepsister is not feeling well and that she needed help. He got upset and told the therapist he didn't agree with her. He told her that his stepsister isn't the only one hurting. Many kids have bad parents and that he never knew his father and lost people he loved, but still, he wasn't mean to his family. I cried for days after this. I'm so sorry for what I put him through. I just want to spend the rest of my life making it up to him, my beautiful baby. With Omicron, we're back to working from home, so it really doesn't matter that I live 5 hours away from work. I work in a bank and I have talked to my boss. She will help me apply to a nearer office. We have rebuilt the stool too. We couldn't make it perfect and we had to patch it in many places and repaint it, but we love it. Update 2. To explain a few things, the resentment that came from my husband's ex-wife was from him moving on. She had cheated on him and they divorced, but her relationship with her affair partner didn't last. From what I understood, he and his ex were planning to give their relationship a second chance right before I met him, and he allegedly changed his mind. He blatantly denies this, but I've heard it from his ex and even my stepdaughter. I know I was harsh on the stepdad, simply because I don't think him to be a good human being. His reluctance towards my stepdaughter started way before the twins, and even before they got married, he made it clear he would prefer it if my stepdaughter didn't live with them. He even tried not to have her at their wedding. After the incident, I don't blame him, even though I know he was happy he got a reason to get rid of her now. The problem is that my stepdaughter loves him and the twins. She never speaks ill about him and always praises him. When she felt hurt by them, her hatred for me increased instead. I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of understood her. My husband isn't an evil man. He's probably a bad parent, but I don't think he is malicious. He knew his daughter was hurting and his solution was to spoil her when she stayed with us. It didn't help either that she saw that he loved my son and treated him well. She always accused him of favoritism and that drove him to spoil her even more to prove that she's his first priority. A vicious circle. On the morning of Christmas Eve, when she was dumped at our doorstep, my husband cried after she went to bed and felt hopeless. I think that's why he couldn't understand the severity of what she did. She had bruises from where I dragged her to her room. Getting mad would probably have been my first reaction if I didn't know the full story and my child was bruised by an adult. I'm not trying to defend him. I'm trying to understand why he reacted like he did. About her moving in with her grandparents, I think my husband, even though he doesn't want to admit it, is repulsed by her right now. It's so sickening, but I don't think he can help it. He feels terrible about the termination and he's on sick leave now. This is so hard for me to write, but I think this is the brutal truth. I have promised myself not to get involved or utter an opinion about this matter to him or anybody else. She's not my responsibility, and maybe it's for the best because her grandparents are decent people. I don't think she's a psychopath. She has feelings and a lot of them, especially rage. I don't think she's faking her rage either. It feels very genuine. Many accused me of being a bad mom who only reacted when I personally was assaulted. I will have to live with this guilt and make it up to my boy for the rest of my life. These few weeks have been so dark. I keep thinking that she would have hurt my son with the hot drink instead of me, and I wouldn't have had the time to prevent it because it went so fast. I can't stop beating myself up about it, and I probably deserve it. My only defense is that her violence escalated very quickly and after the twins were born. Before that, I deemed the situation to be manageable. I was wrong and I'm so sorry I let it go for so long. I don't feel well. The termination was so hard on me because I loved and wanted the baby. This has nothing to do with my political views or beliefs. I don't live in the US or any other religious country. Where I live, termination is a basic human right and not a political view. It was hard for me because I have longed for a baby. I'm going to live with my parents for a while now, even after we settle the economy and separate our finances. I feel like it's good for us at the moment. My son is so happy with them even if he misses his dad. He knows if he chose him, it meant his stepsister too, so he's trying to adjust to a life without his dad. We're getting a dog. He has always wanted one but couldn't because my stepdaughter is allergic.